Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
loud and clear.
so
Yes, we can.
good morning to our friends from the University of Eswatini. It's nice to meet all of you here. And of course, good afternoon to all our colleagues from AP or anyone else joining from Malaysia. Thank you for the invitation to speak on this topic, which I'm personally very passionate about. Just give me a couple of seconds for me to share my slides. Should not take so long. Okay, so I guess you can see my slides, right? It's up on the
Yeah.
screen. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I've gone beyond the question of whether we should open the door. You can look at the title of the presentation. I simply put it as opening the door rather than should we open the door, because I'm already beyond that, right? And I believe that you have had the first session of the brown bag last week, which I had the liberty to and privileged to have a look at the slides as well. And I think you would have some knowledge as to what is generative AI, or in short, Gen AI. So what I would do in this talk is slightly different. So I was looking at the slides that were presented last week. And what I've decided to do also this week is to include certain aspects, some social aspects on the use of AI, whether it is machine learning or whether it is large language models or generative AI, which a lot of people actually do not focus on initially. So this is the issue of responsible AI. I will basically run through some illustrations of fairness. So there is a very big traction in the developed countries when they actually do research on AI or talk about the use of AI. A few things. I think there are three things that come to mind. First is fairness, second is accountability, and third is transparency. So this is, in fact, ACM now has a conference devoted to these three aspects of the use of AI. So what I want to do today also is to share a bit of what are the issues that we need to be aware of when we use AI systems, generative AI and generative text included, right? And I'll point you to some of the research. And also, in addition to Prof. Murali's introduction just now, I was for the past 10, 15 years, I was also involved in the implementation of data science systems. Some are AI in nature, implementation of systems at the government and also the private sector. So, I will also be able to share both from the academic side and also from the industry side. Please. Okay. Now, what I want to do first is that because a lot of people talk about AI, and being a very technical person at times, sometimes you feel that the term AI is used too much loosely, that it loses, certain meaning. So what I want to do is actually to set the stage, to set the context so that we are all aware of what we are, when we mention AI, what do we really mean by AI, right? So not too much of a technical content, but just a quick overview. If you look into the literature, this is an image or report on the state of AI research, which I've taken from Elsevier. Of course, Elsevier, has a lot of journals published under them. So AI is a vast area. So the key point of this slide is that AI is a vast area, and these are the key areas. These are the 8 key areas where a lot of research is being done, right? And what does this mean? If you think of, let's say, GPT or Chat GPT, where doesn't appear here, but the research or the technology that goes into Chat GPT spans across things like search and optimization, machine learning for sure, neural networks, and probably natural language processing as well. So you would see that these are basically the core technologies or the core areas within AI which people combine so that it works together as an application like ChatGPT, Stable Diffusion, and the likes of that, right? So AI is so the first key point is that AI is a vast area. Um, so the generative AI is just one bit of it, right? And in general, when we talk about an AI system, so in order for us to understand better, so all AI systems are similar. We can actually sort of, if you like, build an abstraction, how would you simply describe an AI system? So I describe it in terms of the operational definition. So when you put an AI system to work, whether it's ChatGPT or whether it's a robot or whatever it has these three key things. Number one, it has the ability to interpret events. Yeah. So if you look at the driverless car, the events are being transmitted by way of a sensor, a camera or radar or whatever. If you use ChatGPT, the event is actually the prompt that you enter into ChatGPT. So that's the event, right? And once receiving an event or a stimulus, we will say, uh, it will do some reasoning. It will look into its own data store and look at what decision should it make, what should it output, right? And then you take actions. All right. So if you have used uh, for example, DALI, which actually creates images, right? So the event is actually you prompting DALI what sort of images you want. The interpretation happens or the analysis happens. It will take that string that you want. Let's say, for example, I want a picture of a man playing a golf, right? So it will take that, it will pass that, it will actually look into its memory in simple terms, right? And then it runs the process behind to output an image. So that is the action part, right? So it's very simple. It sense and interpret, learn and model the concepts, decide, plan, and take action. So this is basically the blueprint for the high level blueprint for any AI system. So so typically similar to humans, right? But there are different kinds of technologies out there that we talk about, right? Number one is, for example, if you go to a modern bank these days, they use a machine learning system to assess whether you are worthy of a loan or not. So that is an example of an AI system, which is not a generative AI system, but it is a supervised learning system, right? So so the oldest AI technology out there that you can probably look at is actually supervised learning, right? So what does it mean? If you are going to teach a system to differentiate between apples and what are not apples. So what you typically do is that you will show uh, the machine some representative examples of apples, in this case, red apples or green apples, and you put it a label, right? This is an apple, a red apple or a green apple. And for the rest of the world, for the rest of the fruits which are not apple, right? So you label it otherwise. Okay, so it's just like teaching a child to differentiate between apples and oranges. So you are providing a supervised uh, learning to the system, and and of course the challenge with this is that for a computer system to learn, you need a lot of examples. You need a lot of pictures, as opposed to teaching a child to differentiate between apple and oranges. You can just show them two; they will learn quickly, right? So this is supervised learning. This is the earliest form of AI that you could probably appreciate, right? It's just to make decision to discriminate different groups, right? Whether it is apple, oranges, or different objects, right? In a driverless car environment, for example, you want to differentiate whether the object in front of the car is a pedestrian or any other object. So this is supervised learning, right? Um, So the second portion is, of course, when you have supervised learning, you also have unsupervised learning. So the objective of unsupervised learning is very simple. It's basically for the system to be able to differentiate different objects, but you don't have to tell what are the objects, right? So if we just show you example here, if you look at the part of the screen on the left, you see a mixture of apples and oranges. But to a computer system, without you putting in the label that this is orange or apple, it will not know, but it will somehow know that different objects. So this is basically unsupervised learning where you want to differentiate one from another. So for example, in many banking systems or computer antivirus systems, you want to detect anomaly. So whether it is normal behavior or is a fraud, right? So this you don't have to really tell whether it's a fraud, but you can tell that it is different behavior. So this is unsupervised learning. Um, And very recent as in a few years, you would have heard things like reinforcement learning. Before large language models were made mainstream, you have noticed that a subsidiary of Google, for example, DeepMind, they created uh, systems that can play games, right? Can play the games of Go or whatever, right? So this is reinforcement learning, and this is modeled after how humans or children learn, right? So when the system learns correctly, you give it a reward, right? When the system did not learn correctly, there is an absence of reward. So it is learned like that, and most of the state of the art systems, the AI systems out there that play games actually work on reinforcement learning basis, and has been very successful and can even play computer games better than humans, right? So you have supervised learning, you have unsupervised learning, you have reinforcement learning, and of course these days the state of the art, which I did not put here, is called something called self-supervised learning. So that's there as well, right? So things are moving very fast. Right? So now, how is generative AI different, right? So now, generative AI, so what we usually do is that if you remember the idea of training a system to differentiate between apple and oranges, so you provide it a lot of data. So instead of asking the system to say, hey, given another new picture, tell me whether this is an apple or an orange, what you do is that you tell, hey, learn from, given thousands of data points or images, learn how to represent those images using a very complex probability distribution, and use that model that you learn to actually generate new scenarios or new data, so syntactic data, right? So essentially, if you uh, essentially what it does is that it can give you content based on a variety of inputs. And a lot of generative AI systems today are multimodal. It can work with both text and images, right? If you look 6 months ago, ChatGPT will only work with text. But if you look today, you can actually, I will show you an example afterwards, which I've just done this morning. You can actually throw at it an image. So it's multimodal. It can work with both images and text already, right? So and soon we will be able to see that we can generate videos. Experimental systems are there already. We will be able to generate videos based on description, right? So that is coming, because simply a video is just a sequence of images, right? Um, and there are several types of generative AI models, right? The so you don't have to know the technical details, but this is just to tell you that certain models are different, right? Uh, those are GPT models, essentially are transformer models, right? Your chat GPTs and so on, that allows you to generate text, are basically transformer models. Okay, so within transformer models, they have a different architecture, encoder and decoder. If you work with images, right, your diffusion models and your variational autoencoders and your generative adversarial network. So the first three are basically used to generate images, right, from text. The last one is actually transformer are used to generate text. It can do translation as well, right? So these are several types of generative AI models, and I think to appreciate these things, maybe allow me some time to just give a very brief overview of how actually things work be under the hood, so that you have an appreciation of all those things. So again, nothing technical, but very much conceptual. So imagine you want to generate a picture, right? Now you can generate photorealistic picture. So most of the tools that work behind uses a technique called diffusion. So what happens is actually you'll be wondering how can system generate such realistic, photorealistic images. So this is how the system is trained at the back end, right? So you start with a lot of images. For example, if you start with the image of a cat, what it does is that you add some little small noises, but many of them, right? So you actually make the image noisy step by step, and you will get from left, you have a fixed forward diffusion to the right hand side. So yeah, you have a noise here. And what we then do is that you learn another system that can actually reverse the process. Okay, so this is how the system is trained to generate images. For example, if you can put in a prompt, can you please generate for me an image of a cat with a wing? So in real life, you don't find cats with wings, right? Unless your cat is very special, right? But how does the system know how to insert a wing into the cat? It's actually through the uh, reverse denoising process, which is a probabilistic process, right? So sometimes you find the wing, at the side of the body, sometimes at the back. So it's a bit random, but it's controlled. So this is how diffusion works. Um, Another very interesting thing is that this GAN, generative adversarial networks, was even before things like DALL-E went mainstream, right? So you can actually use generative adversarial network to generate real images, very real images. For example, this case, I hope the website is still there. If you go to the website, thispersondoesnotexist.com, you can in fact you can generate a new face, which is really a human face with all the right proportions and symmetries, right? You can say, well, I want a female, 26 to 35 years old, Asian, and the AI behind will give you an image just like this, right? And who would doubt that this is not a human face, right? Okay, so we are at that level where you can, so of course the problem comes when people use this sort of technology to generate things like deep fakes and so on, right? For fraud and so on. So good and bad. So this is what we can do with a generative adversarial network. And of course, transformers. The hottest topic now is transformers. So it's actually things like GPT and so on are basically what we call the foundational model, which you can fine tune for your own task, right? Okay, so if you are involved in research in certain areas, you can actually have your foundation model trained on your own data, which is possible now, right? So this is and I want to share with you. So the part one of the talk is basically a very quick overview of the different kinds of areas within AI which are impacting us now, and what sort of what are the four key areas of generative AI that you find that we are using now. But what I want to do now is actually to show you some of the ways that I have used, a few ways that I have used generative AI tools. This is very new. This is this is Bing Chat. If you are, I'm not sure if your university is subscribing to the Microsoft A3 or A5 Microsoft 365, but if you do, you will have uh, uh, access to the Microsoft Bing Chat Enterprise version, which we have at APU. So what you can now, it is multi-modal. So what I did was that this is a photo of me exchanging a memorandum of understanding, an MOU with Red Hat. So Red Hat, of course, you know that it is one of the top open source companies in the world, but it's owned by IBM now. So I just uploaded this picture. I just dragged the picture from my folder and dumped it into Bing Chat, and I've asked the tool, I've asked Bing Chat, tell me about this picture. You can go into the picture, establish the context, 5th September, and so on, and it tells me what is this about, right? So this is now possible. Not only we can ask, a Gen AI to actually answer questions based on our document, but we can also ask it to answer questions based on a series of images, because the technology behind can understand images now. So this is actually being tagged. If you have access to it, it's quite a nice piece, and it can even search the web for you based on your images. So that is a real image, it's not a deep fake. Yeah. So that is possible now. Super interesting. And I do even now with whatever little time that I have, I do some coding, I do some programming, trying to implement an experiment with new AI toolboxes. One of my favorite tools is actually Python. Python is the language that I use, and I like to use a platform called Anaconda. So if you are a Python programmer, you will know this tool, right? It's called Anaconda, and this is on the cloud. And what is so nice about this tool now is that it now comes with a co-pilot, right? So when I'm developing my code on the left hand side, if you see here the screen on the left hand side, right? There is now an Anaconda assistant on the right hand side. Okay, so imagine in a computer science school, we should train our students to use this, because in the workplace, people are using this, right? So what I do is that there is a there is a structure in computing called regular expression, and I don't want to memorize what is the regular expression. So what I do is that I ask the Anaconda assistant here, my co-pilot, to say that that can you create me a regular expression that matches the string. Okay, so the description is there. Because I don't want to remember what, because there are a lot of regular expressions for different purposes. So can you just tell me? So this is much easier. What I will do back in the days is that, I will just take out a Python reference book and I will read the book. So, what I do now is that I can actually ask it for, what I want, give me a regular expression that does something, a specific thing, right? It gives me the code, and guess what? Before I paste it into my production environment, I can actually run it here in this code assistant itself. So, wonderful, right? So imagine how we can actually use this to change how we teach computer science in school or even in university, right? So you have your personal programming tutor with you here. So this is a rather new feature as well. It's called I call it Copilot anyway. So this is my Python workbench. Is how I use it. You know, to do my programming, whatever coding time that I have. Now, another very interesting thing that you can do again with Bing Chat, right? So this is Bing Chat. So just right off the Microsoft Edge window, what I do is that I will just pull my PDF file into the search box, right? You can do that, right? You pull your PDF file or any Word file or whatever you want into the Bing Chat, the chat window, the search window, and it opens up in Microsoft Edge, and you can click the Bing Chat. And what you see here, so this is the paper that I've just read a couple of days back, right? And you can have your Microsoft Bing Chat, your personal co-pilot, and you can ask it, question. You can question your PDF based on this chat, right? So I'm asking it. I just want to know before I read the entire paper. So I'm asking Bing Chat according to the current web page, which is the context here over here on the left hand side. What are the sources of what are the sources of biases in language models? So it is combing through the content of PDF and telling me the key points where to start off, especially if you have a big. So this is now possible, right? And imagine how, of course, there are other tools, but this is easy. It's free. It's in Bing Chat, right? And there's no limitation. And this is how, imagine teaching our research students, our masters or PhD students, to help them understand, increase productivity of, understanding a research paper by using Bing Chat like this. Right? Of course, we still got to verify the facts, whether it's telling the right thing or not. So this is another thing, another feature that I personally use in Bing Chat. This is something older. It's Google Bard. I don't use Google Bard now. I prefer Bing Chat and also Chat GPT. Well, I mean, we can ask it to write some codes for you to create a PowerPoint presentation, because a PowerPoint presentation at the back end is just basically a series of codes. Okay, you can do it, right? But it's not so interesting because there are many other tools that can do this now. Now, another thing that you can do is if you fancy running your own version of ChatGPT on your laptop, right? Because if you're afraid of, well, what happens if your data leaks, the data that you upload to ChatGPT or whatever leaks? The question is, do you have a local version of a so-called ChatGPT available? So the answer is yes. The tool is called GPT for All, right? It works exactly like ChatGPT. Um, you can download it, and you can download the models that you want. Any models that you want, you can download behind, and it works. Okay, and this is completely free. Okay, unlike ChatGPT where you have to pay subscription to APIs and so on. So GPT for All is another free tool which you can configure with the latest open source or free large language model behind, like you can even put it with Llama 2 from Facebook. Right? So with this own tool, you can also train it on your own document collection within your enterprise or your organization. Right? So this is there as well. And of course, you probably know this. This is the Bing image creator now using DALL-E version 3. Okay, won't go through much of this. And there's also another provider called Dream Studio, which uses Stability AI's diffuser. So probably you know this, yeah, because you have gone through your first session of brown bag yesterday, right? Now, let me share with you some use cases as a computer science educator, right? How would I use, Gen AI in my class or in assessment or assignment? So this is now imagine if you are teaching computer vision, right? So one of the very I'm not sure how many of you here are in computer science. So one of the very basic thing that I would teach in a computer vision class is actually for a student to be able to write a piece of code, right, to detect an object, either in a video or in an image. Right? An object can be, for example, if you take the example of a video from a dash cam from a car, can the student write a code to detect the car which is in front of you, right? So it's object detection. Okay. So what I can do is that I can ask a Bart, or you can ask ChatGPT, or Bing Chat, or whatever it is, you know, to write codes, okay, to write an initial code to do that, right? So I would say, can you please, write Python code using OpenCV, or whatever library that you're using, to detect a car as an object in a video scene, or in an image. So that can be your prompt to the Gen AI. And what it gives you is actually some Python codes like this. It doesn't matter whether you understand, you don't need to understand this, but you see, in a code like this, there are a lot of what I call supporting codes, which are not relevant to my task. The task that I want to teach the student is how do you detect an object in the scene, right? So there are a lot of codes which is actually setting up the entire program, which at this point, we don't want that to be a distraction to students. All right. So that kind of code can be generated by ChatGPT or whatever it is, because it is not important at this point. What is important is, for example, here, the set of codes which I've um, pointed out here, it is where the students need to experiment with the right parameters, or the values of the parameters, to do a good detection of a object or the car. So my intention is actually for the students to play with this and make sure that they understand what is the connection between the parameter and the performance of the program, not the others. So the others can be generated by uh, ChatGPT. So in this case, the students learn the concept and how they can implement the concept in codes, rather than having to, sort of get turned off by, errors here and there because of other scaffolding mechanics, right? So this is how I can use it in basic computer science program and computer vision. Um, I'm going to skip through this because this again is a PowerPoint, creating PowerPoint slide. Now, there's a very interesting, because in APU, all our assessments are now online. So students return assessment tasks, responses to assessment tasks online, right? So what we can easily do as part of a research project is actually uh, writing a set of codes using ChatGPT API to actually compare uh, whether the answer scheme is similar to the response returned by the students. Okay, and we are not talking about word similarity; we are talking about semantic similarity. The exact same technology where ChatGPT is so good at. Okay, looking at where the two pieces of text are close, not only in terms of length or syntactic properties, but also semantic properties, right? So this is now possible, and you can just do it in a few lines of code, just like this, just that we have to create an application. So this is also another very interesting use case from education perspective, because it allows and it helps the instructor to, to access large amounts of text responses, right? So this is okay, and I've seen this in one of your slides that you went through last week, right? So how do we detect tools? Of course, there is always a race between Gen AI tools and detection tools, right? It's always is that, or it's always that. But there are some things that you can use. At APU, we are using turn it in, but of course, turn it in also has some, false positive, suffers from false positive in certain cases, right? But I'm just giving some text. These slides can be shared with you later on. So what I want to actually go into now is something which is of interest to me in the past few years, which is on the responsible use of AI. So in general, whether it is a machine learning system, is Gen AI or whatever, right? So I think all of us will need to have a good view of what are the issues around it. So the discussion that follows, I mean, my the few slides that follows this does not only apply to Gen AI, but it's generally AI, right? General AI. Okay, so for those who are as old as me or as young as me, you have probably recalled a movie called Minority Report, right? So it was starring Tom Cruise. If you some time ago, I watched it as a kid, right? So there is a movie called Minority Report, and in that movie, there is a system that can predict. So they can predict a crime happening before it happens, and the police will know who are the perpetrators, and you can arrest the people before the crime happening. But of course, there's some issue in terms of law, right? Because you have not committed the crime, I'm arresting you. Okay. So similarly, some good 5 or 6 years ago, uh, quite a number of state police departments, this is in the US, have experimented or implement something called predictive policing. And if you just do a quick Google, you'll find many articles on this. And what they found out was that the predictive policing, what it's supposed to do is supposed to allocate resources, basically police to patrol certain areas of neighborhood. And what they have found is that more and more police presence in neighborhood with African Americans compared to the whites. So the question they ask is, does it mean that African Americans do more crimes? So that is the whole issue, because uh, the machine learning system that was trained on the data, because the data is biased data, right? So imagine um, we have biased police who are biased against a certain group of people, arresting them. And most of the data, maybe out of 1,000 arrests, you have 990 arrests to certain groups, but 10 arrests are from another group, right? And that is not by design, because that is, police are focusing on certain areas, right? So if you dig further, so this is was a very big issue back then, and I think the system is now no longer there in operation. What simply happened was, because of discrimination by police, the data that was used for training the system encodes the bias of humans, right? And when that is developed into the system, of course, the system will make biased decisions. It's no fault of the system at all. It's actually the data that is being used, right? So this is one of the fairness issue that was highlighted, and this was this was the issue last time, but I think they have fixed it, right? So this was in 2016 again, right? The issue is with data. Now YouTube has if you upload a video to YouTube, you have an option to transcribe it, right? So based on your voice, it will give you a transcription as a subtitle or whatever. So even with Teams meeting or Zoom meeting, you can do the same. So back then in 2016, right, this was a research published in 2016, that if you are a female speaker, right, the accuracy of your transcription at that particular point in time was just 47%. But if you're male, you're better, because the accuracy is 60%, right? Does this mean that female speaks less clear? So certainly not. It's just that probably the amount of data that was used for training the transcription system consists of more male voices than female voices, right? But the outcome of the system, it seems that it is discriminating one group versus the other group. Okay, so this is one of the, and even though this has been fixed, but there are other issues is coming up. Again, previously, if you did the Google search on the word CEO, you see more men compared to women, right? So does it mean that we have less uh, women CEO? Certainly not. Um, and this is quite recent in 2019. So Amazon has a facial recognition service you can pay per use, right? But this researcher who is also African American from MIT actually found out that the facial recognition technology uh, couldn't detect dark skinned faces, right? So what went on? So I think the problem was basically with how the system was trained and the data that fed in. My point of showing and talking about this is basically uh, you got to know uh, what are the issues surrounding the use of your AI system. So if you procure an AI system for yourself, you got to ask the vendor, what sort of data do you use to train it? Are there any issues with the data? Who are the groups represented in the training data? Are they balanced, or are they imbalanced? So these are the sort of things that, we got to start asking when we actually deploy a system, right? And fairness, is it's a social technical problem. It's very intuitive to humans at least, okay? Uh, but it's very challenging to define technically, right? It's so difficult to define fairness technically. Some fairness conditions can never be met simultaneously at the same time, right? So, uh, and and basically, just to make it is a very complex problem, but simply put, how do algorithms become unfair? Because number one, the main culprit is the bias encoded in data. And we often ask, who are the ones creating the data? Of course, it's humans, right? So when we are biased, the data that we generate will encode our bias. Number two is that minimizing errors by fitting majority, right? So uh, this is due to how AI systems are being measured in terms of performance. It's being measured in terms of accuracy, right? So if you have 1,000 pieces of data representing people, and if 999 data points are actually belonging to certain group, and there's only one data point belonging to other group, the system will actually uh, adapt and perform better on the majority compared to the minority. So that is a reality, and this has been proven many, many times in AI systems, right? But a lot of people, when they procure systems, they don't ask about these things. Another one is inability to explore alternatives. I won't go deep into that. Okay, so what about large language models? So something which is very specific that we are talking about for the past couple last week and this week, right? So do we have this problem in large language models? So the answer is yes. Okay. Um, Large language models, when they generate text, right, they have been observed to exhibit social biases. And I give you some examples here, and you can read from this paper here, which I've just flashed the paper just now in Bing chat, right? So examples of biases when the text model is trained with the English corpus, right? Female names are more likely to be associated with family and male names with career, right? So see where is the issue, see where the issue is, okay, right? So this can be in text generated, and this group of researchers, they are actually from Carnegie Mellon, right? And this paper was published in one of the key conference in machine learning, ICML, right? So they found that in their study, female names more, are generated more and likely to be connected with family, and male with career. So it is not true, right? Okay. Um, Secondly, African American names tend to be associated with unpleasant words, right? Uh, of course, if you want to know more, you can read this paper. And you know what? The first line of the paper reads like this. It says the first line of this paper, the one at the bottom, it reads like this. It says, warning, this paper contains model outputs that may be offensive or upsetting. That means they are giving some real output examples from these large language models. So something that I think we need to be tactful of. Of course, there are a lot of more research need to go in as to where are the issues in terms of the model, because you don't really see, what are the whether the coverage is there. And imagine when the students use this, you know, uh, students may take the discriminating sort of text generated as the truth. So that is where also the issue lies. Okay, so it may be taken as truth, right? So to me, we still have a very long journey to go. The area of all this fairness, discrimination with respect to AI is a very hotly researched area, at least for the past few years, and also now, right? So this is some of the things that I hope that with this talk, yeah, you can be aware of. Um, it's not easy to get rid of all these fairness and biases, but there are ways to do it, which I will not share, but there are many interesting ways to do it. But certainly, you want to evaluate the tools that you use or the tools that you ask your students to use in your context, right? Because the data that was used to train the system may not be data which is aligning to your societal context, whatever, right? So you got to have a look at that. How do you actually uh, evaluate that? Okay, so what's your take, right? After listening to this and last week, how do you feel about generative AI? Pessimistic, neutral, or optimistic, right? I won't do a poll here, but by yourself. Maybe during the question and answer, you can share, right? I want to share with you a study which was done earlier this year, right? This is the EduCause quick poll. It was done 10 to 11 April. They have polled 441 academics from various parts of the world. Okay, they did a poll in February and they did another second poll in April. So they asked the same question as this: how do you feel about generative AI? Right, and probably you can take this poll also in your university. So you would see that in the space of few months, we have people have grown more optimistic about the use of Gen AI in education. This is about education, right? Higher education. And when being asked, how are you using generative AI for, whether you have used it for work or you anticipate to start using or you have no intention to use it. So here is the result, which you can also get from the online. So 67% have used AI tools for some reason, writing an email or whatever. Okay, uh, even if you use tools like Grammarly and so on, which helps you write, you're already using Gen AI, right, behind under the tools. And for educators, these are the four areas where we usually want to use, uh, Gen AI. Number one, for dreaming, starting brainstorming when you get stuck, trying to get creative, trying to get a head start of a task of writing article or whatever. Drudgery, not a good word, but yeah, sending communications, emails, drafting emails, right? So that we have AI tools which are now able to draft your email based on the mode, right? You can have an encouraging mode, you can have a formal mode, whatever, right? Design, presentation slides. Some of the images in this presentation itself, I've used Gen AI to generate the images because I can't draw, right? I'm not an artist. Okay. Uh, Drafting your policies, your departments, your strategic plan. Some people start to use ChatGPT to draft their strategic plan to get started. And really, the key takeaway, as I always say, is that yeah, whether we are doubtful, whichever side of the fence we are on, we got to equip ourselves. I always tell people that when our graduates go into the workplace would have started to use AI tools long time ago. So our students need to be familiarized as well. And in order to do that, we as educators need to familiarize ourselves to use these tools. Uh, Secondly, think about the impact of Gen AI in your own discipline, right? I'm trained as a computer scientist, so I know what is the impact in my discipline, right? For example, software programmers will become a blue collar job soon, right? Things will be so automated that we don't need so many developers around. So that is the impact. What about your own discipline? Um, what impact will it have on assessments? Talk to the industry and stakeholders about how AI is being used. Okay, it's always useful to talk to industry because a lot of times they are trend setting, right? And finally, because we are all educators and some of us, start to worry, hey, should we ask students to use Gen AI? Should they not use Gen AI? What do we need to do, right? But we can always stand guided by, using this quadrant, these four things here. Okay. So what we don't want is the box on but the red box, right? Do it for me, where students just turn in a piece of work where they did not contribute, and AI is the one that is putting all the content for them. So is this do it for me? Asking AI to do it for me and submitting it as an assessment task should not be there. So we should create assessment to uh, we should strive for co-creation, right? Where we have high AI contribution and high human contribution. Has to be a complex task, okay, where they can work together, collaborate, right? Or use Gen AI to help students get started, brainstorming and so on. But so our job as educators, and I don't have all the answers, is that we don't have all the answers yet, is how do we design assessment so that we can achieve, you know, high AI contribution and high human contribution. I think that is so important because the world is going there. And I can see that in the software development industry, it's already happening, right? So we have software developers together with the co-pilot, which is an AI, developing codes, increasing productivity twofold, threefold. It's already there in the industry. So how do we actually mimic that for assessments in the university? So I think with that, you know, uh, enough said. Maybe if you have any questions, so I've gone very fast. Of course, I don't know whether in the future session you want me to go into deep into certain things or whatever. My background is basically AI. I've been working with machine learning optimization and so on for the past 20 years. So something which excites me and something where whenever I open my emails in the morning, there are new things coming in. So it keeps us going. So thank you very much for listening. So maybe I pass the time back to either Tula or someone else. Thank you. If there's any questions, I see something in the chat, so I did not pick up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Prof. And maybe you can take some of the questions that are in the chat.
Yeah, let me
One of
go to the
them.
question. Yeah.
Okay. The first one is on the ethical implications of using generative AI. The second one is on new policy directions. Then the third is on staff and student training. Maybe let me pause here and hear back from you or from any of your other team members.
So I think the first question from Shamsuddin is how can we guide our students to use these AI tools in learning assignment and project? I think the very first way, and I think the very first prerequisite, and I think Prof. Aftar will know this because she's advocating this as well, is actually equipping lecturers first, making all lecturers really understand what are all these AI tools and how they can actually incorporate, how will assessment be impacted with all this. So lecturers will need to know how it works. What is the boundary of operation? What is possible and what is not possible, and only after that they can start thinking about how assessment can be tweaked, to make sure that students learn, achieve the learning outcomes, while AI tool is just a co-pilot. So the key point is a co-pilot, right? It's not the main pilot, but it's just co-pilot. So I think we got to have that first, right? Fear does not help, right? If I'm fearful, I'll just say, no, you can't use it. So we can't do that. Whether we say that or not, students will use it. So I think number one is actually that equipping of oneself as an educator to really look at what is possible, what is not possible, what should not be done. Okay. Now that is number one because that will allow you to create good assessment, right? Uh, Secondly, is a lot of education to students. All right. So there'll always be a struggle, right? So secondly is that we got to have a guidelines, which I think Prof. Apta's team has done a guideline to actually use a high level guideline by which academics and students can be guided in terms of the main principles or the key principles of using Gen AI ethically. Like for example, I saw a question down there, right? If a student uses Gen AI, how do you cite it, right? So that is in the guideline that we have as well at APU. Okay, so uh, let me go. I'm scrolling down the chat box and see what are the other questions that I can pick up. Okay, another interesting question, right? What are the ethical implications of using generative AI to create realistic but fake content? Yeah, again, so there is always a struggle with. So this question is always there. For example, fake news, right? Humans ourselves, we can create fake news. We don't need generative AI. Right? We can create fake news. It's just that now we can create deep fake. Okay. So you can use it for both. Yes, you can use for positive things or negative things. If you look at South Korea has a booming industry for virtual influencers who look exactly like human, nice, beautiful, and so on. Virtual influencers created by Gen AI. And the owners of this virtual influencers are making a lot of money because the virtual influencers can work 24 hours a day. They don't need to sleep, right? Uh, so of course now this question is interesting because for those in the AI field or in the computer security field, now there's a renewed challenge, right? So not only do we detect fake news, but can we detect fake actors, right? Okay. Now, technology is, as I said just now, the detection technology and the Gen AI technology is racing with each other, right? Just a few months ago, uh, we have many tools who are able to detect fake images generated by diffusion method, right? Like DALL-E and so on, because there are certain technical things that we can some technical details behind the scenes that we can actually detect. But as technology gets better, now you can create photorealistic images, right? So now it becomes more difficult. So the challenge is on uh, in research to create tools that can actually generate, can first detect, deep fakes, right? And we will see that this challenge will be with us for a long time, right? So it becomes more difficult. I show you the image of the girl just now, which I generated using AI tool, right? Yeah. So if you feed that into an AI tool that actually can generate videos and can lip sync, you give it a script, you can generate video using a face that don't really exist in the real world, right? So the question for the research community is that how do we actually detect it, right? So so face-to-face meetings is still quite important, right? So how can society address the concerns? I don't have the answer, but I think be wise, know what you can do or what you can't do, right? And of course, we have all this multi-factor recognition of authentication, which is beyond the discussion today. Okay, so Samsudin again, is there any study that has shown significant improvements in students' grade? Uh, I have not come across that, but I have come across report that says that students are, in programming classes in particular, students learn better with a co-pilot, right? Students learn better with a co-pilot because imagine if you sit I'm assuming that you have some idea about learning programming. If you put a diverse group of students together, some would have done programming in high school, some would have no idea what is a programming. So students are learning at their different pace, right? And there's a single instructor. So what pace does the instructor follow? So if you have a co-pilot like the code co-pilot, which I've shown you just now, which I use, students can actually, use that co-pilot to learn at their own pace without fear of losing out because it's always there to help, right? It's always there to help. So uh, to answer your question, Daria, I have not seen, maybe I did not go and look for it, but I have seen report where in terms of programming, students find that it helps them much better, right? Because you have a personalized helper there. What policy has your university implemented? I mentioned just now we do have it's not a policy, but rather a guideline, set of guidelines as to how you want to use. But in general, we should empower academics to set the boundaries for their own assessment task, because one assessment task to another will differ from even from one discipline to another discipline. So that's why going back to my first point is educating educators is very important. How does your university ensure that students and faculty are adequately trained? So we have our digital learning hub under led by Prof. Akhtar. So we have done a lot of interesting activities, interesting discourses to raise awareness, both for ethical use and also what is possible and what is not possible. We have run workshops for our academic staff. Quite a lot have been trained in to use Gen AI tools for writing, for research paper, and also the ethical issues around that. Yeah. So Jonathan have answered that in the chat. Are students allowed to cite AI? So yes, some journals, even some very top journals, academic journals, have now a guideline of how to cite Gen AI. It's not really plagiarism, but it depends, right? So if you are going to submit your research work to a publication venue or conference, so you got to know which is your original research contribution. So that is the core part. We should not ask Gen AI, but some part can be written, some parts of the papers. AIs have to be prompted, so students have to know exactly what they want to generate. So yeah, thinking skills aren't affected. Yeah, so maybe I think what you're trying to say maybe is that we can sort of train our students to think better what they want. How safe is confidential information? For example, proposal CV. So this is from Joseph. So I don't have the question to that, but if you recall earlier when I was using the enterprise version of Bing Chat from Microsoft, enterprise version, there is a line that says that your data in this chat is safe. Okay, of course that is a guarantee from the provider. So what I think is that they will not use, so they will not use your data for training their system. So your data is safe. They will not use your data in any way. So that is the agreement. Okay, so whether you are confident or not, that is up to you, right? Okay. Okay, how best we can assess student projects when these tools are used? Again, the question is uh, so as a lecturer, you need to determine the boundary, what you can use it for and what you can't use it for. Okay, right? So the idea is actually to make the student focus on certain content which is matter to the students, while allowing them to use Gen AI for those supporting work which is not part of the learning outcome. So I think to me, my principle is my personal principle is that. Which AI tool is best to generate? This is from best AI to generate informative data with sources. You probably want to look at Bing Chat because Bing Chat gives you the references as well, where it is getting that information, which you can go further. Okay. Cloud AI, okay, can do a better job. Okay, so Jonathan has given some style referencing. So I think that I've gone through the entire list of questions in the chat. I hope that helps. Is there any other questions that you want to ask online? You want to unmute your microphone. So maybe if you don't have a question, maybe I can ask one question. I mean, how deep is your university in terms of adopting Gen AI tools? Is it something which is you have sanctioned and say that you have to use it within certain guidelines, or you have not started on that, you are still considering? Maybe just a quick understanding would be maybe beneficial to